Welcome to today's video about 8 manipulation tactics that can silently destroy your reality. You've likely encountered the term gaslighting, but many people don't fully grasp its mechanics or how it might be impacting them. Let me clarify. Gaslighting is a subtle erosion of your sanity. It rarely involves shouting or overt aggression. It's often quiet, a gradual process where someone methodically edits your memories until you begin to believe you are the one who is unreliable. You state a fact with certainty, they insist it never occurred. You voice an emotion, they label you as overly dramatic. Their goal isn't just to win an argument, it's to dismantle your trust in your own perception of the world. With enough time, their version of events starts to feel more real than your own. This is the insidious power of gaslighting. It's not a single, heavy blow. It's a slow, steady drip of doubt. One corrected memory, one dismissive glance, one firm denial at a time. Eventually, you begin to question your own mind, your recollections, your emotional responses, your intuition. This pattern can emerge in any type of relationship, with a partner, a parent, or a colleague. And the progression is always the same. It starts with your confusion, leads to your self-doubt, and ends in your silence. Because once they make you doubt what you know, they gain the ability to control you. So, how do you fight back? You become an archivist of your own life. You document conversations and events. You validate your own emotional responses, regardless of how another person attempts to frame them. You do not need anyone's approval to accept your own experience as valid. The clearer your own record becomes, the less room there is for anyone else to distort it. The moment you stop trying to justify yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you reclaim your power. This next method is less widely recognized, but its use is just as frequent. Love bombing begins by feeling like a fairy tale, and that is precisely the danger. It is founded on intensity, not genuine warmth, not deep connection, sheer intensity. You are instantly elevated to the center of their universe. They become fixated on you. They call you flawless. They speak of a shared future after only a few encounters. The communication is relentless. Incessant messages, long phone calls, extravagant praise, and unexpected presence. It all happens so quickly that you feel swept off your feet without a moment to think. For a time, it's impossible to find fault in it, because who wouldn't want to be the object of such profound adoration? But this is the deception. Love bombing is not about appreciating you. It's about manufacturing an addiction. It creates an emotional high that is incredibly difficult to abandon later on, because once they feel you are secured, their behavior shifts. They withdraw. They become distant. And you are left to wonder what you did to cause this change. You internalize the blame for the sudden coldness and desperately try to regain the attention of the person they first pretended to be. That initial version was a carefully crafted illusion. This is how emotional dominance is packaged as whirlwind romance. It's a hallmark of toxic attachments, narcissistic abuse, and trauma bonds. Love bombing is not an act of love. It is an act of conquest, disguised as passion and wrapped in a veneer of flattery. So, what is the defense? You deliberately slow the pace. You pose questions. You observe their actions over time, not their grand declarations. A real bond requires patience, vulnerability, and mutual respect. It develops organically, not through force. If someone is trying to lock down a lifelong commitment before a foundation of trust has even been laid, you are witnessing a performance, not a partnership. And you are under no obligation to stay for the second act. Guilt tripping is one of the most pervasive and insidious tools of emotional control. The key to its effectiveness is that it rarely presents as outright manipulation. It's not a command or a demand. It's often a subtle gesture, a heavy sigh, a prolonged silence, or a quiet remark like, "I suppose it's fine, especially after all I've sacrificed for you." They don't state their disappointment directly, but you are suddenly overcome with a feeling of having failed them, of being indebted. The implication is that your refusal to comply makes you inconsiderate, unappreciative, or selfish. This is the core mechanic of a guilt trip. It's not about a tangible wrong you have committed. It is about making you feel responsible for their emotional state. It can happen even when you are simply enforcing a healthy boundary or making a choice that is best for you. It transforms your compassion into a liability, and their past kindnesses into a debt that can never be fully repaid.
The most unfortunate part is that it is highly effective, especially on people with high levels of empathy. You sense their unspoken disapproval, and before you realize it, you find yourself apologizing for an imaginary offense or agreeing to something that goes against your own interests. It's a common tactic in families, friendships, and romantic partnerships. The objective is always the same. If I can't persuade you to agree with me, I will make you feel terrible for disagreeing. So, how do you counter it? You must learn to pause. Step away from the immediate wave of guilt and ask a simple question. Did I violate one of my own moral principles, or am I simply being made to feel that I did? Authentic guilt is a signal from your own conscience. Manipulated guilt is an external pressure tactic. You have the right to maintain your boundaries, even if someone else attempts to make you feel punished for it.
Triangulation is a tactic where an individual, instead of addressing a conflict with you directly, introduces a third person into the dynamic. This creates a strategic social triangle. It doesn't present as a direct confrontation. Instead, it feels like you've walked into the middle of a conversation about you that you were never meant to hear. You'll start to be presented with statements like, "Well, Michael and I were discussing it and we both feel," or "A lot of people are saying you're being unreasonable." This is not an attempt at resolution. It is a power play. Triangulation establishes a dynamic in which you are no longer in a one-on-one discussion. You are now arguing against an invisible consensus. Being outnumbered makes your own perspective feel less valid. You begin to second-guess yourself, wondering if you are, in fact, the one being irrational or overly emotional. And that is precisely the desired effect. When a person triangulates, their goal is not to solve a problem. Their goal is to win by forging alliances, creating a united front, and positioning you as the outlier. This method is prevalent in dysfunctional family structures, such as when one parent vents to a child about the other parent instead of communicating directly. It also appears in relationships when one partner brings in a friend or an ex-partner to validate their side of an argument. Suddenly, you are not just debating a point with your partner, you are defending yourself against an entire narrative they have constructed. It is profoundly exhausting, because the original issue is buried under layers of second-hand opinions and alliances. So, how do you dismantle it? You refuse to engage with the third point of the triangle. You state clearly, "If we have an issue, let's discuss it between us. I'm not interested in hearing other people's opinions about our relationship." Keep the lines of communication direct. You have no obligation to justify your actions to a third party who has no place in the conversation. You set the rules of engagement, and if the other person refuses to meet you in a direct conversation, you have every right to withdraw from their game entirely. The White Knight, on the surface, appears to be a rescuer. They arrive in your life offering guidance, solutions, and profound empathy for your struggles. Initially, it can feel like a tremendous relief, as if someone has finally taken the time to understand you. But this is merely the setup. In a toxic dynamic, the White Knight does not simply resolve problems, they covertly orchestrate them, so they can be the one to provide the solution. They will subtly sow discord in your relationships, then offer you a shoulder to cry on. They will undermine your self-esteem, only to be the one to build you back up. They might warn you that a friend is angry with you, and then offer to mediate the very conflict they instigated. They start the fire so they can take credit for putting it out.
What is the motivation? Being the savior grants them a sense of purpose and control. If you did not require rescuing, they would have no role to play in your life. The manipulation is hard to spot because it is cloaked in the language of support. But their assistance is conditional. It is not geared toward your independence. It is geared toward keeping you in a state of manageable crisis, just dependent enough to ensure their continued relevance. If you begin to heal, set firm boundaries, or solve problems on your own, they may become cold, dismissive, or even accuse you of being ungrateful for all their help. So, how do you identify this? You must look for the pattern. Do they consistently offer support when you are struggling? Or do your struggles seem to escalate just before they swoop in? Genuine help is meant to make you stronger. The white knight dynamic requires you to remain weak.
Accept help when it is offered with no strings attached, but never surrender your own agency in the process. You do not need to be saved. You only need the space to save yourself. Silence can be a form of peace. It can be a space for reflection, a sign of respect, a mutual understanding. The silent treatment, however, is an entirely different phenomenon. It is not a break. It is a weapon. It is the act of using your absence as a means of control. The person does not argue or explain their feelings. They simply withdraw, becoming unresponsive, cold, and emotionally unavailable. And they maintain this state until you capitulate. The silent treatment is not about creating space. It is about demonstrating power. It is designed to make you anxious, to have you endlessly review your recent actions, searching for the unknown transgression. It pressures you to be the one to bridge the gap, even when you have no idea what caused it. And that manufactured uncertainty is its greatest strength. When communication is refused, you are left to fill the void with your own insecurities. Soon, you are no longer focused on your own feelings, but are entirely consumed with guessing how to restore their approval. You will offer an apology just to break the tension. You will compromise your own position, not because you are wrong, but because the emotional vacuum has become intolerable. For the person employing it, this silence is a powerful lever. It communicates, I am in charge of the emotional climate of this relationship. I decide when you feel secure, and if I am displeased, you will earn back my attention. It appears in all forms of relationships, with partners, family, and even in professional settings. Anywhere one person seeks to dominate a situation without engaging in a discussion. So, what is the countermove? You refuse to participate in the chase. You address it directly. You can say, I can tell you're upset, and I'm ready to listen when you're ready to talk, but I will not be manipulated by silence. And then you must hold that line. A healthy relationship is a dialogue, not a monologue. If someone is only willing to communicate on the condition of your surrender, they are not seeking connection. They are seeking compliance. Breadcrumbing is the act of giving someone just enough emotional validation to keep their interest alive, but never enough to build a genuine connection. They will send an occasional thinking of you message, like your social media posts, or offer a fleeting compliment. Small gestures designed to keep you on the hook. But when you try to make concrete plans or discuss the future, their responses become evasive, non-committal, and always postponed. It is a form of relational bait and switch. You continue to invest your emotional energy, hoping that this time will be different, that this is the moment they will finally commit. But they are not moving toward you. They are simply dropping another crumb to keep you following. The objective of breadcrumbing is not intimacy. It is leverage. It keeps you emotionally tethered to them while they remain free of any real responsibility. You become trapped in a cycle of hope and disappointment. And it is incredibly difficult to walk away because they never officially end things. They don't reject you, they just perpetually delay you. That ambiguity is designed to keep you waiting, hoping, and checking your phone for the next small sign of life. Breadcrumbing is not limited to dating. It can occur in friendships and even professional contexts. The motive isn't always conscious cruelty. It can stem from insecurity, a fear of commitment, or a simple enjoyment of the attention. But the impact on you is the same. You are held in a state of emotional limbo while they hold all the cards. So, how do you escape it? You stop following the trail of crumbs. If someone's engagement with you is sporadic and inconsistent, if their actions never align with their occasional warm words, you don't need to analyze it. You simply need to recognize that it is not enough. Consistent effort is the language of genuine interest, and you deserve a full meal, not scraps. DARVO is one of the most psychologically jarring manipulation tactics you can encounter. Once you learn to recognize its formula, you will begin to see it with surprising frequency. The acronym stands for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender. It is a three-step rhetorical maneuver designed to completely derail any attempt to hold someone accountable for their actions. This is how it unfolds. You approach someone to discuss something they did that caused you harm. You are calm and respectful, aiming for a resolution. First comes the denial. That is not what happened. You are remembering it wrong, or you're blowing this way out of proportion. The second step is the attack. They shift focus from their behavior to yours. They critique your tone of voice, your timing, or bring up a past mistake you made. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about their action, but about your flawed character. Then comes the final, disorienting reversal. They position themselves as the true victim. You are no longer the one who is hurt. They are. They claim they are being unfairly attacked, that you are impossible to please. Your attempt at communication is reframed as an act of aggression. And now, you find yourself on the defensive, apologizing for the way you brought it up. That is the DARVO sequence. It is more than just a diversion. It is a complete hijacking of the narrative. It transforms a conversation about accountability into a stage play where the person who caused the harm is recast as the martyr. For the person on the receiving end, it is profoundly confusing and can leave you feeling ashamed or guilty for having spoken up at all. You start to question yourself, wondering if you were, in fact, too aggressive. You end up defending your right to have feelings instead of discussing the actual issue. So, what is the solution? You must refuse to accept the new script. If the conversation is suddenly twisted to be about their pain and your alleged cruelty, you must pause. Gently, but firmly, bring the focus back to the original point. You can say, "We can discuss how my delivery made you feel, but first, we need to resolve the issue I brought up." DARVO thrives on creating confusion. It loses all its power when you remain clear and centered. Because holding someone accountable is not an attack, and speaking your truth is not an act of cruelty.